Hey, what's up, everybody? Now we're going to move forward with the pre-Secret Wars stuff. There's a couple issues, one New Mutants, one X-Men, to just kind of like review before we really hit that New Mutants stuff, or the Secret Wars pretty hard. I could include these in the Secret Wars stuff, but the Secret Wars is like 12 issues, which is a lot to talk about. This video is probably going to be over an hour. But so we're not. So we're going to start with the New Mutants number 14. This one heavily focuses on Magik, which is not called Magik yet. She's called Illyana. She's standing around looking at her like little bloodstone pendant and how there's two left, and then she's thinking about how her childhood was taken away and how she was tortured and how she's like a demon sorceress and all this stuff. And then she sees the New Mutants running around in the snow and playing, and Amara, how she's kind of adapting but seems to be having like a hard time adjusting, and everyone else is like having a good time. And then Danny sees Amara looking sad, and so she creates like an image of the thing in her heart, and it's like a coconut tree, right? Like a palm tree, because she misses her home, and they talk and chat about that. And Illyana's just kind of watching them being sad hippopotamus, and Xavier's watching her and being concerned. And then off in the distance, as they try to invite Illyana to come play with them, we see our old friend Sim. Who's Sim? Sim is the guy who worked for Belasco, Belasco is the evil sorcerer who kidnapped Illyana in the Magik and Storm series. Was it called Magik and Storm? I think so. Anyway, so the kids all want to do something for Xavier's birthday. It's Xavier's birthday, right? Professor reads it. Villain, we're gonna give. Yeah. And so they all head over to Miss Hunter, who is the dance teacher, who's kind of like the New Mutants' like extra best friend, adult who helps them with stuff. And they're telling her what they want to do, and she's like, "Yeah, let's do it." So they head off to the mall, and they're chit chatting, and then Wolfsbane, what's the fucking name? Rain. So then Rain sees like an old friend, Diana, and they're chit-chatting about nonsense and whatnot. And then it's just kind of like an Archie comic, to be completely honest. Back over at the mansion, Xavier is hanging out, and he's having some issue where he's feeling like a ping at times, where he just feels like there's some sort of entity who's like causing some sort of cosmic interference with telepathy or something. Anyway, while he's kind of distracted with that, Sim rolls in, and they have like a battle, and Xavier gets defeated very quickly. Meanwhile, the kids return with their stuff, and they tried calling Xavier to see if he was here, but they weren't able to get a hold of him because they kind of want to sneak in the stuff and throw him like a kind of at the best surprise party as they possibly can for somebody who can read minds. But since the mansion kind of looks quiet and stuff, they don't know if they should go in and set stuff up. So they send Illyana in because Professor Xavier can't read Illyana's mind. It's like completely closed off, and he can't sense her either. So she heads in, and she's wandering around, and then Sim grabs her. Oh no! And this is the part from way back in like Magik and a Storm number 3, where she's like in limbo, and or the kids like teleport in and they see Magik being like tortured, or Magik's there running and they like teleport into limbo and then they teleport out, right? And they're like, they got a car with them. If you remember that scene. If you don't, you can go back and watch my video, but anyway, it's not that important. So then they teleport into the X-Mansion from outside because Magik is like being knocked out by Sim, and so they try to fight him, but he's much stronger than him. He's just kind of beating the shit out of him, to be completely honest. And then Danny uses her powers to make him see Belasco, and then he like freaks out, and then he sees Darkchild, who is Illyana. He freaks out some more, and then Amara covers him in like lava and is like, "Look, I got him!" And then Sim like breaks out. Meanwhile, Hunter is dragging Illyana to like the safe room and out of the mansion, and the elevator breaks, and then she's like a cripple, so she's having a real tough go. And then she stumbles, and Sim's like, "Gotcha!" At that point, Illyana wakes up and uses like her super powerful magic to blast Sim, but it's not quite enough. And so then she pulls a soul sword out of like limbo or whatever, which is like the magical power of like her essence formed into a blade, and she like strikes at Sim, and he like freaks out. And she's like, "I will fucking kill you unless you serve me and do anything I want." And he's like, "Done." And he's like, "What should I do with this woman?" And she's like, "Leave her be." And he's like, "Yes, my lady." And he's like, no, she's like, "Get out of here and tell you something again." And so he goes. And then is it Danny Hunter? I can't remember. Anyway, she's like, "What is going on? I don't understand." And then Amara kind of tells her, "Don't worry about it," and then like casts a spell on her so that she forgets everything. Later on, the X-Men return to the mansion, and there's a giant volcano kind of crater looking like a caldera inside the middle of the thing, and there's a car inside, and they're throwing a party for Professor X, and all the X-Men are like, "What the fuck?" Anyway, they're having a good time and everything. And then Professor X walks up to Ileana. Is like, "Would you like to dance?" And she's like, "What?" And then he stands up because now he can walk again. He's finally cured. Not only is he like mentally cured, but he's physically cured from before. And so everyone's like laughing and having a good time. And Ileana's hugging him, and everyone's super happy. And then Kitty Pryde sees someone banging on the window outside, and she goes to check it out, and it's her like kind of not sort of best friend slash wannabe boyfriend from his angle. Oh fuck, what's this guy's name? It's Doug Ramsey. Doug Ramsey. And he's like, "Hey, I want you to come with me. I got an invite to go to the Massachusetts Academy for Mutants or whatever." He doesn't know he's a mutant, but we find out that he's a mutant. If you weren't paying it, I don't think it's come up yet, but yeah, he's a mutant. Anyway, you kind of figure that out because he got invited to the Massachusetts Academy. Yeah, which is where Kitty went for like a month or two when her parents sent her up there, and it's ran by the Hellfire Club, and so she's super like, "Oh no, what are we gonna do?" All right, next up, that leads us directly into Uncanny X-Men number 180, and this one focuses. It kind of is like a sequel to the previous. We start off with Professor X just being jazzed that he can like play basketball again, and he's like wearing his like 1970s like track outfit with his like bandana and everything, and he's running around. And then he has another attack from like the psychic force, and he's trying to figure out what it is. At that juncture, Storm wanders in. They have a chit chat about being a leader and learning and how she's changed and how she enjoys her change, but it scares her at the same time and what it means. And then Professor X talks to her about like Kitty, and Kitty's got a lot of issues because Storm's like was like her mom, because her real mom was like a total bitch and like abandoned ship. Her parents got and tried to ship her off to like boarding school, and so then she's like, "I need help." And so Xavier does this pretty funny thing. He like touches her head and he's like, "Cypro reveals no mental illness. You're not insane." And she's like, "Shut the fuck up." Anyway. Elsewhere, Kitty is out with Doug, like playing at the arcade, and we get a slightly different intro to like her introduction to him going to the Massachusetts Academy and her being invited along. And so they're playing the arcade, and they're both like super geniuses, right? Outside of being mutants, and so they break the video game by like beating the score so bad that it resets, and the guy's like, "Get the fuck out of here!" And then she's so upset because they've been kicked out of like every arcade in town for spending like one quarter and destroying these games. He then takes her to lunch. And she talks a lot about Aurora and everything that's going on there and how it bothers her. And then they like hold hands a little bit, right? And then he's like, "Oh, hey, by the way, I got invited to the Massachusetts Academy." And she's like, "Oh my gosh. Wait, does she say it here? They talk about it here. No, I think, okay, so he did tell her at the thing. It's anything to me when you first met last spring in Japan. You cut her hair, blah, blah, blah. She knew what it meant to me. I'm sorry, blah, blah, blah. No. So he does do it here. He says, "Want to hear some good news? I've got an appointment next week at the Massachusetts Academy." And she's like, "I was hoping you'd come along with me since you were a student there and you can kind of guide me." And she's like, "Oh, fuck." So we could just consider this like a re-invite. Meanwhile, Peter's like cutting trees down with an axe, and Wolverine's like, "Sup, bro?" And then Peter's like, "What do you want, Tovage?" And he's like, "Just hanging out." And they start talking about Peter's all butthurt about Kitty Pryde and how she should be with Doug because he's just a country boy from like Russia and yada yada. And then Wolverine calls him like a bitch essentially, and he's like, "I'm not a bitch. I just want what's best for her." And then Wolverine's like, "Smells like bitch to me." Anyway, Aurora's at some garden. She donated. She didn't like destroy all the plants she had at her manor. She brought them all the way over to this arboretum of some sort. The Bronx Botanical Gardens, it says. And so she's over here smelling flowers and looking at everything and like watering them and stuff. And then she hears these like goons trying to like stab these old people. And she goes over there and beats the shit out of them, drives them off, and then summons lightning. And then the people that she saved are like more scared of her than they were the muggers, obviously, because she's like a lightning goddess. Anyway, later on, Kitty is talking to everybody about their opinions on going with Doug and checking all that stuff out. And they agree that it's a good idea and that Professor X will monitor the situation. As Kitty's walking away feeling upset and thinking about who's going to be in charge of the situation, she gets like windswept out the window and taken really high up in the sky so that no one can observe them or watch or whatever. And then her and Kitty like have it out and they like discuss and they like cry and they decide that even though Storm's going to be different, she's still kind of like Mama Aurora to Kitty and they can still be best friends forever and all that good stuff. So it's a very sweet scene that leads us to Kitty and Doug heading off on a private jet to the Massachusetts Academy, a private jet sent by the Hellfire Club. And as they're chit-chatting about everything going on, part of Kitty's like selling point on going to help Doug is that, well, the last time they saw the White Queen, she was in a coma, and like there's only her and Sebastian Shaw anyway, so it's really not that much of a threat, yada, yada, yada. But as they're on the plane, the White Queen like wanders out of like the other room, and she's like, ta-da! And Kitty's like, Professor X, I need help. But unfortunately for her, dun dun dun, as they're driving away from the airport, the X-Men feel something, or Professor X feels something, and they head out to Central Park where they find this giant, ridiculous-looking, like spacecraft-looking thing, and they all run inside and they get zapped and disappear, which will take us in 2 weeks to Secret Wars. Dun dun dun. So go ahead, like, share, subscribe, comment, and I'll catch you guys later.